Good afternoon. I now call the joint meeting of the City Council and the Minnehaha County Commission to order.
Clerk, can I have a roll call of the City Council?
Councilmember Selberg,
Here.
Sale, Starr, Barranco,
Here.
Cole. Here. Jensen.
Here.
McCurris.
Here.
Neitzer.
Here.
Tenhaken.
Okay, we have a quorum.
And I notice that there is a quorum for the Minnehaha County Commission as well. Now ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask for approval from the county for the regular agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
From the city side, is there a motion to approve the regular agenda?
Motion to approve, Cole.
Second. McCorris.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say yes.
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 All right, motion passes. Takes us to agenda item 1. This is second reading of an ordinance amending the 2002 revised joint zoning ordinance for Minnehaha County and the city of Sioux Falls by amending certain property and text within the Laurel Ridge Plan Development District. Good morning, Kevin, or good afternoon, Kevin.
Afternoon, I'm Kevin Hookman from the County Planning Department. So this is a major amendment request for a planned development. And so this request has kind of 3 different parts that for the total request, including a rezone request. I'll just go to the map maybe. For the remaining portion of the highlighted lot here, a few years ago, or summer of 21, so only a year ago, the east 200 feet of this lot was rezoned. So this request will rezone the rest of the lot B to sub-area A of the planned development. The second part of the request is to add personal services into the allowed uses within sub-area A. And then the final part of the request is to remove regulation which allows the hours, or which limits the hours of operations within sub-area A. The request was brought before the Planning Commission on May 23rd. At that hearing, the Planning Commission approved the kind of 2 parts, or a couple parts of the request. The first part of the request that was approved was the rezoning of the remaining portion of Lot B. And then they approved a alteration of to extend the hours of operation on New Year's Eve celebrations to 1 a.m. for the city side decision and 12:59 for the county side. And that is one thing that you'll have to do here tonight is if you make the same decision, you'll have to rectify that 1 minute and choose one or the other in your motions. The County Commission and City Council may vote to amend, approve, or deny this action. Kind of take either all or parts of this as the Planning Commission did as well. So I am here for any questions. Perhaps this is a well-known property. I'll just go through the photos real fast. You'll see one of the entrances to the property, the main lot B there. With the whole lot being rezoned, it'll be easier to utilize this lot for, say, a second event center. As the petitioner has requested the personal services that would allow things like photo studios and haircuts, that sort of thing, to be allowed on the property. But that is not currently allowed, I should say. That was just the requested portion of the property. So this is looking towards the looking towards the south, towards up the hill. You can see there's kind of a blind spot there, and the driveway's are a little bit hidden, but road improvements should help that along. This is the tree line looking on the property, and the tree line and fence line looking at the property from the main driveway. And then there's the existing wedding barn. The petitioner is here as well tonight to discuss anything as needed, and I am available for any questions.
Are there any questions for Kevin?
Madam
All right.
Chair.
Commissioner Barth.
Kevin, isn't a birthing center also part of the proposal?
So when staff originally was contacted by the petitioner, he was wanting to have what he called as a birthing center, which would have like a place for midwives and the delivery of babies. It would not be a hospital, and we advised him that if he was going to make a request for that the request would be something that could fit under a personal service in our ordinance.
So, Madam Chair, so it's still on the table?
As far as I'm aware, it's still a possibility. I don't know. Maybe you can ask him personally what his plans are for personal services on the property.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Kevin? All right, if not, if the proponent would like to speak.
Hello, Tyler Childress, owner of the property at site. To answer your direct question, Jeff, we've kind of taken a step back from that, and we've, as Sioux Falls grows, we've seen a need for that, but maybe that'll be next time down the road. So that's kind of our direct question or answer to that one. But yeah, looking to just extend the 200-foot to the full property line, Lot B, and keep growing in the same business model we currently have. Any questions at all?
Are there any questions of the owner? All right. Is there anyone else here today that would like to come forward with questions or comments? All right. Is there anybody from the commission or the council that would like to speak? Commissioner Barth.
I love to speak. I think that birthing center was, in fact, probably the biggest hang-up. But for those of us that have been out there, and I was just out there this week over at the cemetery, it's still a very rural area out there. And I don't want it to be converted into a strip mall before they're ready for neon signs and stuff. That said, I think that those other type operations could be quietly accommodated. But you know, this road is going to be paved all the way to the Tyler's property, and I think that you know, whether it's weddings or funerals even, hairstylists and photographers do come in handy.
Any other comments, questions? Commissioner Karski.
So there's two requests here. It's basically changing the hours of operation and also rezoning, correct? And the recommendation is to allow the rezone, but not to allow the personal services and the changing the hours of operation. Is that the gist of what I'm getting here?
Yes, so what was recommended by the Planning Commission was to allow for the rezone and a change in the hours of operation for New Year's Eve only. So that way they can go to 1 a.m. on New Year's Eve, but other than that, it would stay at 12 a.m. for every other night.
So what would not allow the other one? If we rezone it, doesn't it just open it up to being used? Or, I mean, how do you restrict one thing but still rezone? Help me understand that. I mean, because within the zoning ordinances, it basically has permitted uses, correct?
Correct, and so that this property is zoned as under a planned development. And as a planned development, that's kind of what we're deciding is what language is going to be underneath that section of the ordinance. Currently, under permitted, uses permitted in sub-area A, has just the one line that says banquet, reception hall, and events facility on sub-area A. So if you were to say, want to continue with the personal services, then there would be a section B that says personal services, and add it that way. Does that
So
answer your question?
we wouldn't be changing any platting or tracks or anything like that associated with this, just the rezone.
Yeah, with the three different parts, it's the rezone and the text amendment changes requested. And what was approved or what was recommended was the change in the rezone, and then only the time change for New Year's.
And I guess where I'm going with that is, I know that there's, I believe there's some liquor licenses associated with this property. So this wouldn't, a change this way would not disqualify liquor or alcohol sales on the property, or would that have any impact at all to it?
Well, so there would still be two separate properties. And as far as the liquor licenses, the petitioner might even know more about his status and liquor license, whether or not he can attain one for each property, or how that works.
So there is just one, and it's for the place where the wedding barn is currently?
Currently, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'd look for a motion on the county side.
Madam Chair, I'd like to probably make two motions. My first one is to reconcile the little problem between 12:59 and 1 o'clock. Let's make it 1 o'clock.
To extend the hours of operation on New
By
Year's
1 minute.
Eve to 1 a.m.
Yes, ma'am.
For New Year's Eve only, correct?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Or I guess that would be technically New Year's Day.
Then Tyler will have to kick us out, Dean.
All right, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we have one motion, and then I'm looking for another motion about the rezoning of Lot B from A1 agricultural to sub-area A of the Laurel Ridge Plant Development District.
That would be my motion.
And that's my second.
Okay, motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Counselor Neitzer.
I guess maybe for consistency, we'll do exactly the same way with two motions, or?
Ours is already stated at 1 a.m., so we don't need to change the time in ours. So we would just need a motion to approve, and we could vote on it.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve as stated.
Okay, Neitzer with the motion, Cole with the second. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Selberg,
Yes.
Baranco. Cole.
Yes.
Jensen.
Yes.
McCurris.
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
All right, so this motion is passed to approve the rezoning of Lot B and to extend the hours of operation on New Year's Eve only until 1 a.m. All right, that takes us to item 2, which is a presentation on the link. Bill Early, welcome.
Commissioners and counselors, let me just start off by saying we did it. So we collectively, we spent, about a decade? Several years before I ever came to this community, talking about having a community triage center. We got it up and running, and we are 1 year plus a certain number of days into this. And I'm pleased to report to you that thanks to the work of both the commission, the council, and many, many others, we are serving people in our community. So congratulations to everyone. I will tell you also that I'm very pleased that both healthcare partners, Sanford and Avera, have been nothing but wonderful partners in the link. They have come together, always looking for the best interests of our community and those people that we're serving. So you probably want to know some data. Well, we have some data for you, and I just want to also say that there will be more data forthcoming. I'll touch on that in just a moment. But our opening day was June 1st of last year, and since in 15 minutes after the doors were open, we had our first triage. Given the sensitivities involved with describing some of the work that we do, I will not share with you the outcome of that first triage. I will just tell you it was very memorable for us in so many different ways. But I will also say that since then, we've had 4,000 additional triages. So our first year total, 4,001 triages, meaning emergency assessments. And then moving on from that, those 4,001 triages reflect 1,426 unique individuals. And when you think about it, and I think most of us have had someone in our life that could have used a link. And in my case, I will tell you, I think some of you know the story. One of the reasons why I was interested in the link is my mother was an alcoholic, and she could have used service like the link back in the day, but we did not have something like that. The reason why I raised that is because 1,426, that's a number, and it's a pretty substantial number. But is one enough? I mean, at some point we play that game, and my background is as a lawyer, so please forgive me when I start engaging in this kind of mental gymnastics. But, you know, the reality is at some point you start to ask yourself, well, you know, when have we had a positive impact in our community? And I would suggest that for every one of these individuals, data has shown that 4 or 5 people are involved in their immediate ecosphere, if you will, and that they're impacting those people. Those are people that they love and who love them. So all of a sudden, 1,426 becomes what? About 10,000. So we have made a huge impact in a short amount of time, but our work is just starting. I mean, this is a startup, right? And we're trying to prove the concept. And I think that realistically, by all measures, we have succeeded. The doors are open, and we're serving people. Are we perfect? No. Can we get better? Absolutely yes. Will we get better? Absolutely yes. So demographics, very interesting here. So our Native American population comprise about 56% of the folks at the link. Our white or Caucasian, 34%, and down from there. By the way, the data that we're sharing is approximate. The reason why is that we have USD's Center for Rural Healthcare Improvement working alongside Augustana University to really go over the data, subject to data use agreements. There are privacy and HIPAA issues that are involved. We have to use de-identified data, so they are working at this point in time trying to give us more visibility into not only the data, but the impact that that data has into our community. So we'll look forward to further reports on that as well. Triage visits by age, you'll note that between 30 and 49 comprise over 55% of the folks that come into the link. Method of arrival. So, you know, when you're building a community triage center, you have pro forma data, and you do your best to try to assess using our community needs assessments, our healthcare assessments, and all the data that we can compile to try to figure out, well, you know, what parts of our community will be most positively impacted, who will visit, how many visits, what kind of outcomes can we expect. These are things that we will be seeing certainly into the future. One thing that I think is very interesting with this particular piece of data is that approximately half of the people who come to us at the link come via law enforcement. So it would be county sheriffs, Sioux Falls Police Department predominantly. However, I do want to point out 23%, and I would suggest this is a higher number than most would have suggested, come in on their own. Either on their own, they show up on their own, or through a friend or family member. And I think the more that we get the information out there about the link and more people know about the link, I think that has the potential of having a huge impact in our community, because we know we're just scratching the surface in terms of, even with the numbers that we've shown in the first year, in terms of the number of people who can use our service for sobering, withdrawal management, crisis, or behavioral health care. By the way, please interrupt me at any time. I'm used to it. I have a 9-year-old at home. She's quite precocious, so she interrupts me all the time. So trends, June 1st to May 31st. Our sobering observation. This is by far the biggest portion if you just look at the number of triages, over 2,300. The average length of stay, a little over 6 hours. So we take a reading of folks coming in. Oftentimes they need to rest. We have resting, and I would imagine many of you, maybe not all of you, but many of you have been to the link to actually see what we have. And for those of you here, commissioners and counselors who have not, we invite you to come. We'd be very pleased to show you the link. And then when they are being discharged, we also assess them in terms of their ability to be safely discharged back into the community. With respect to withdrawal management, this has been a huge win for us, that of the 418 total visits in withdrawal management of an average length of stay of 3.5 days, 77% complete the program. That's huge. That's a big number. And crisis stabilization, this is one that I would say needs further assessment. Now, granted, for those of you who've been in this space for a period of time, you know that folks that present to us usually come in with comorbidities, meaning they have more than one issue that we're working with to help them on. With that being said, I still think that there's work to be done with respect to crisis stabilization and an assessment that our board is going through currently. We're going through a strategic planning process to see, okay, what does the Link 2.0 look like? What should it look like? What should we continue to invest in? Where are the duplications, if any, of services being offered in the community? We don't want to duplicate service. We want to be available for the emergent needs that people have here in our greater Sioux Falls area. And then finally, I want to point out a stat that's not actually on this slide, but I think that for those of you who are math-oriented like I am, when you start playing with numbers, I like numbers. So you have 2,340 and 418 and 31, and someone might say, well, excuse me, that doesn't quite add up, does it, to 4,000? It doesn't. But the silent number in all of this, and something I think we should also be equally proud of, and probably change our PowerPoint presentation at some point, and that is this. We have about 1,300 folks that we have triaged, but haven't necessarily fallen into one of these categories. We've been able to triage them and get them into the hands of others to help them. And I will also tell you that part of that is the phone. And it'll be interesting to see too with 988 coming on board and texting and whatnot. I mean, using technology to reach people where they are to help them in their progression towards sobriety. Because that's what we're in wellness, that's what we're here for. And that's why we've invested in this. And I say we because I'm a taxpayer, but we, meaning, you know, the county, the city, Avera, and Sanford as our 4 founding partners. I'm so proud. One of the reasons why, by the way, just as a quick aside, one of the reasons why my family and I chose Sioux Falls to move to from Southern California pre-COVID was because of what I would call big C community and big P philanthropy. When you look online, you start to see communities who are doing things that are novel, that are exciting, that are right, the right thing to do. This community is second to none. We have a lot to be proud of, and I think the link is one of them. And I'm seeing Commissioner Karski nodding, and I just want to point out and give him thanks as our vice chair of the link board. He brings a great devotion to our mission every day, and just want to publicly thank you for that, Commissioner. Thank you. So financial updates, we are actually tracking on budget, and coming from not only legal world but nonprofit world, I will tell you that having 95% of our dollars go to direct services in the mission is a pretty nice number. Something we can all be very proud of. Our overall revenue is exceeding our expectation with respect to withdrawal management. I mentioned before pro forma financials. When you're building something new, particularly for those of you who are entrepreneurial, where you think, this is my best estimate, some people would call it a guess, of what some of those plug numbers might be, and I think that we came in with our best numbers, best estimate, best guess, and we thought, you know, $100,000 a year reimbursement from insurance companies, that would be a really good, that would be a win. That'd be a good number. And we actually plugged that into financial modeling for 3 years. 100,000, 100,000, 100,000. Our first year, we're not even done because of the lag in payment of insurance. We're over $220,000 already. That's encouraging. It's a bit of a surprise. It's encouraging for us because at some point we have to continue to make our way towards financial stability, viability, and so we're keeping our eye very closely on every dollar. The payer sources, as you can see here, 25% out of commercial insurance. Again, this is withdrawal management patients, and our monthly run rate is approximately $180,000 per month. And it says effective in May, and that is because we actually, per contract with our third-party provider, which is Avera Behavioral Health, there was a bump up at that point because it was the end of their first year of service to us. So per contract, we bumped that up. So our run rate before that was approximately $170,000 per month. Lessons learned. Tough population. Safety, compassion, and respect are the 3 pillars of everything we do at the link. It's a tough population that we're working with. And there are times when we have to use private locked rooms for everyone's safety. We do have 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365 security on staff at the link. The link is a much better, more healthy environment for people to get on the road to sobriety than county lockup. I mean, that was by design. But still, there are times when if someone is not playing nice with our staff and if they are creating disharmony amongst other patients, then we need to assess whether or not the link is the appropriate place for them to be. We do partner with the shelters, and we're just a few blocks away from Union Gospel Mission and the Bishop. And I do want to talk about recidivism. So this is something we expected, right? I mean, we expected the link would have, whether you call them frequent faces or friendly frequent faces, however you want to put it, the reality is we were expecting this. I would even suggest it's not even the number of visits. It might shock some people. It doesn't shock me, but that we could actually have some folks that could have been higher numbers. But our team shows up every single day. And by the way, the good news is I'm not involved with any of the care. Remember, I'm a lawyer, so not good to have me involved in that care. But the people involved in the care show up every day with the heart for, is today the day? Is today the day that somebody's going to make that, what I call buy decision, that they're going to buy into their future and they're going to say, you know what? Today is the day that I'm going to start really being serious about going towards the road, down my road of sobriety and go from the sobering piece at the link into withdrawal management and then beyond into treatment. I will point out client number 6. As much as we have heartbreaking stories, and we do, it's just part of the work that we do, you can't just focus on that all the time. You got to celebrate some wins too. And client number 6, whom I know, 59 visits at the link, and the 59th time was the time that this person said, coming from San Diego, I like to mix in a little Spanish every now and again, basta ya, enough already. Just can't take it. This is it. I need help. I want to change my life. And our team then was able to help that person. That person now is sober, has successfully been in treatment, and is working. And I mean, just doing all the things that we are hopeful for and frankly that we pray for the folks in our community. So we're happy to share that. We do, for some of the folks that are listed there and others, we do have what's called collaborative care conferences where we have a convening of the folks that are really involved with trying to get people towards the road of sobriety and getting their lives back. And this is a very talented group. They meet every week. There are written waivers allowing us to talk about their cases. You know, we have to be very careful, again, because of privacy rights and HIPAA and whatnot, but this group works with our most challenging cases to see if we can't find a way to help folks. We also, I am very pleased to tell you, we had our first convening of our Community Advisory Council last month, and we have more than 30 separate representatives of various different organizations here in our community who are committed to the kinds of things that we're committed to in terms of empowering individuals to lead better, more healthy lives. And you can just take a look here just for some of them. These are folks that are very actively involved, and it's a way for our board to get two-way communication. It's always easy, and you know, I'm telling you, you're actually sitting up on a dais, so for me to use the example of, you know, our board sitting up on high and proclaiming this is what needs to be done. That's not how this works. This works by understanding for those that are on the ground, and also, frankly, nothing about us without us. So we're identifying some individuals to assist us in this analysis, and I would call it a bottom-up with a kind of a top-level layer of direction, making sure we're directionally correct, but really a bottom-up process where we can see, you know, how are we going to attack this problem, and how can we create the best Link 2.0 going forward that we possibly can. So I'm very you can tell I'm enthusiastic about this. Lessons learned regarding withdrawal management. Not to get too technical, we have both medical, which is a 3.7 level of care, and our social detox model, which is a 3.2. And we basically, when we admit people, oftentimes it's around the medical. We want to make sure that medically they're stable and things are good before we step them down as appropriate down to the social detox model. We find that that works. You can see the counties that we're serving. You know, the Link, actually, we focus on serving Minnehaha and Lincoln counties. Will we turn anyone away who shows up at our door who qualifies? No. I mean, not based upon where they reside. There may be other factors of whether or not the Link is the right place for them, but certainly not geography. And substance withdrawal that are treated, you can see this here. Alcohol by far is the highest. It also is the most dangerous. You know, coming from a different world, you know, business and law, I didn't really understand this until getting involved with the Link, and just the withdrawal process for someone who who struggles with alcohol addiction. That's more serious than some of the other things that you might otherwise think. And finally, I think you might find this statistic very interesting, that of the folks coming through our withdrawal management program, only 25% are actually homeless. 75, so 3 out of 4 of those individuals have stability in their housing, whether through themselves or family members. So crisis stabilization, we've already covered this at a certain level. I will tell you, for those who have seen the Link, the physical space where we have those 3 chairs, I would suggest if I came in with a need for crisis stabilization, I might not find that the most private of all spaces. We actually recognize that, and to the extent that we have availability, we'll move some of those folks into some of our withdrawal management rooms. With that being said, as we consider kind of what Link 2.0 looks like, we will continue to consider this, as well as the impact of Avera's behavioral health offerings, and whether or not, you know, I mentioned earlier, we don't want to be duplicative of services. We want to make sure that we are taking care of emergent needs for our community members. And then we've also added the SANE program at the Link, and this is very new, so really no data to share on this yet, but post-sexual assault care, we have a room set aside on the 2nd floor for that, and it's a much better setup than somebody going to the ER will tell you. So very proud about that. Quickly, as we go through the rest, I just want to say under the Met needs, the 3rd and 4th items, transportation and transitional housing, I want to thank particularly the counselors from the city council, and most specifically Councilor Selberg, for his leadership in generating support through Operation Hope. And I know this is something near and dear to your heart. Councilor, I just want to thank you. It's making an impact, and as 988 rolls out, and I know that we have constant dialogue around this, we expect we're going to have even more impact. And so the mantra that I have in my head is serving more with more. And so with respect to transportation and transitional housing, we have an agreement with Southeastern Behavioral for some transitional housing beds, because it's very difficult for folks to get that as they're awaiting inpatient treatment. And then you can see some of the gaps in services. We suffer like everyone else in this community. We're trying to find talent, and finding folks to fill in, particularly for intensive case management, it's a challenge. So finding social workers, I will say for you all or anyone who might be watching at home or a rerun of this somewhere at some point in time, if you got a social worker, send them to us, because we could use them. So we talked about challenges around staffing, outreach. We have this first year, we have this data, but we've barely done the outreach. We, crawl, walk, run. We want to make sure that we can get the service done, get it done right, and then keep moving forward. So now you're going to hear more. Has anyone actually heard any of the spots that have started to run regarding the link? No? You're all too busy. So, but they're running now. Census fluctuation, for those that are involved in this, you just know you can't really plan. You can't really plan for any given day or, frankly, any given hour. Data collection we had talked about, and then safety is always a paramount concern for us. Successes, I'm not going to read through these. I'm just going to let you know I'm really proud of this team and the successes that we have been able to earn the trust of folks, working with our partners, and trying to find our way. We're still in the infancy at some level, but we're looking forward to feedback, and frankly, the tough conversations around some of the things that we could do better. We welcome that. Okay, we don't want to shy away from that. We welcome that, and we will endeavor always to do better by our community. I did want to just give a shout out a little bit more about Operation Hope. I think probably the biggest development with respect to Operation Hope is a recent one, and that is with the rollout of 988, our board has recently approved that we are going to go ahead and for the 4 partners of the link, so again, City of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, Avera Health, Stanford Health, that they will also be able to distribute Operation Hope funds, particularly around first behavioral health assessments, because we just want to be there for people. We want people to know, hey, we're there, we care, and just get in, talk to somebody, get some professional help. Madam Chair, we do have video. I would expect you may or may not want to have an additional 4 minutes on this. It's up to you and your discretion.
I think it's been provided to everyone, so everyone can look at it. So I would suggest that maybe we let everybody look at it. And you've provided a lot of great information. I think I'd rather use this time for folks to be able to ask you questions.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
All right. Councilman.
Thank you. Great presentation. 3 questions. The first is, you had a slide that had to do with how people get to the link.
Yes.
One of them, it said Avera Security. Can you explain what that means?
So if somebody, thank you, Counselor, if somebody presents at Avera, for example, in their emergency room, Avera Security, if there's no need for them to actually be at the emergency room, this is part of why we have the link. Let's not have a bed taken up by somebody who shouldn't necessarily be there. The Avera Security will then bring them down to the link.
Okay. And then the other one was Sioux Merchant Patrol.
That is the same, it's actually an outsourced security for Stanford Health.
Okay. Same thing.
Same scenario.
Okay. And then you made reference to a wonderful new resource we have in the city, which is Avera Behavioral Health's new 24/7 acute care. I I ran into this very thing when I was over at the banquet last Wednesday. We had somebody who was in crisis, and we were trying to figure out where should they go. And unfortunately, we had to get law enforcement involved because of some behavior issues. But so they made the choice. But how does one decide? Do I go to the link? I mean, do I go to Avera Behavioral Health for the 24/7? What's the distinction?
Right, so I'm probably not the most qualified person to answer that, but if I was in that situation, perhaps this might be helpful how I would evaluate it. If it looked like the person needed, for lack of a better way of putting it, someone to talk to, then I think the link is that. If it's something that has more acuity attached to it, so something more severe, I think that that's not us. I think that that is Avera Behavioral Health. They have trained staff 24/7 for more severe issues than what we provide at the link.
Okay, that would explain that, because this person was actively saying that they were going to commit suicide. So that would have been why so it really has to do with maybe severity and how urgent it is, I guess?
It is, because
Potentially.
we just don't have the staffing capability to take on what Avera BH can, and
Okay.
so that would be my recommendation for something more severe.
Okay, and then my last question is, I'm a big supporter of the Compass Center, and obviously, their space is sexual assault. And you mentioned that you're now doing something in that space. I mean, they do a lot of that sort of thing where they have those SANE coordinators, and they will walk with, victims in the emergency room and help them through the court process and all of that. Have you had discussions with them in terms of are you complementing each other, or are you going to be quote unquote competing?
Not interested in competing, not interested in invading anyone else's space. We have had conversations. We continue to have conversations. I actually have a meeting with Michelle next week for more conversations. We're actually looking, because of their space considerations, we're looking at ways that we might even be able to assist them with some of their space needs on a temporary basis, at least at the link.
And it's just,
like that question.
Yeah, it's just a matter of we don't want to be duplicative of services, and, so how can you complement each other where there might be things that you might have resources and stronger, and they may be able to do other things, and
Yes.
so great to hear that you're having that discussion with her.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Counselor?
Thank you. Well, thanks, Director, for the presentation. I know you and Maddie and the gang are doing a great job over there. Quite a few numbers there to chew on. Some are pretty impressive and hopeful, and some are pretty scary. I did like your math on the turning things like the 1,400 into 10,000 people that are affected, those type of things. I would like to see numbers that 23% of the people are coming in on their own. Hopefully, more people are going to say today is the day, and that number will go up. But anyway, I think overall it's just amazing the work you're doing and the difference you're making so far. That 988 number I think is going to be huge. A couple questions would be quickly. How much staff is generally on throughout the day at the link? Is it 3 to 5, or is it?
Yes, at any one given time, but of course they're in shifts, and we're constantly staffed for everyone's safety and security. So overnight we would typically have 3, including a security officer, and then during the day, really depends on what's going on with the number of folks that we have, number of groups that we're holding, but we have various different levels of providers, including RNs, nurse practitioners, what we have been calling technicians, but come July 1st, we can actually refer to them by their official name, and that is their paramedics, who are actually working at the link as well.
Okay, ample staff and help hasn't been an issue at all so far?
So, ample is a word I might not choose. I would say that we do the best that we can. We can't staff up for the highest level of a surge or a rush at any one given time. It's just not, from a business model standpoint, we just, we're not in a position to be able to do that. We try to figure out how to kind of soften those curves out a little bit. We don't want it ever to be something where somebody's not getting the help that they need. We do have the benefit, again, our third-party provider. So Avera wears 2 hats at the link. For those who don't know, they're one of the original joint participants in the formation of the link, but they also are our contracted third-party provider. And so to the extent that we have a situation where we just can't handle it, then we can use the Avera security to have that go the other way, take someone over to Avera, whether it's the hospital or behavioral health. So I think, Councilor Selberg, to answer your question more directly, we have what we need, we believe, for now. The question will be, going forward, and given the data that we have and given what we know from the work that's being done in the community about our health needs assessment, as well as reaching out to more people through Operation Hope and others, will we continue to see an uptick in numbers, and will that then necessitate us to change some of the offerings or the volume of offerings?
Okay. My final question would be, you've broken down a lot of these numbers of different people that have been in, and we know some stories. Do you ever, is it possible or something in the future where people would volunteer to tell their story or share their success story, and that's things that we can do, where whether it be videos like you may be sharing tonight or with advertisements or whatever we're doing for this, where I just wonder how willing they are, or how long a time do you give people to see if they are better before they're saying this works or whatever. But anyway, I would think that'd be a pretty good resource.
Agree 100%. It's tricky, right? I mean, we're still new. We don't have people that are far removed from the process, what I call link alumni. They're not very far away from where they were. I will tell you that the video that is embedded in the presentation, and if you need me to send a link, I can certainly do that separately. But the video that's embedded, the one that I referred to earlier, is a young man. It was on Kello, and it was around Thanksgiving. It was a very heartwarming story about somebody who summarized his journey and his stay in a way that just really left you moved about the benefit of having something like the link available to him, because he talks about what his future might have been had the link not been there. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner, or Counselor, excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for the good work. I really appreciate, especially how you highlight, this isn't just a homeless problem. Substance abuse impacts every economic status in our community. So thank you for the good work you're doing. Two questions. One is, I know there's been a lot of conversation about how we lower the number of emergency room visits. Has there been any numbers done from either of our health systems on what type of savings they've seen because of the link?
So I mentioned the work that USD and Augustana are doing together. So we're that is one of the data points that we're actually looking forward to receiving from them. So yes, we and they, our healthcare systems, are all anxious to see that. I will tell you though, anecdotally, and we have regular conversations with the leaders of the emergency rooms for both Sanford and Avera. Anecdotally, they tell us that has had a significant impact, positive impact, for their ability to deliver health care to the rest of our community for other issues.
Thank you. My final question is, as you and your board are meeting and staff, have you identified any legislative support that you need, policy or rules that you need the city to put on the books, the county to put on the books, or the state to put on the books?
So we have been fortunate. So the quick answer is yes. We have had that, and we've actually had some wins already in that regard. I had mentioned the paramedics. They weren't able to dispense meds. They weren't able to practice at the top of their license. They could actually dispense meds to someone that they encounter on the street, but they couldn't within the walls of the link. And so we were able to work with the legislators here, and we're able to get that law changed. There are a number of issues that need to be addressed going forward. I will tell you, we appreciate you asking the question, and we'll look forward to your help and support as we go forward, looking for some more assistance to get more people served in a more efficient, effective way. Thank you.
Other questions? I would say I have one question. I know just from the work on the county side, when we were dealing with these populations before the link was formed, we would hear a lot about emergency commitments and involuntary commitments, and that wasn't anything that you reported out statistics. Is that something that's being done? Do you know how much of that kind of work is being done through the link?
Yes, so best estimate is, for the data that was given to me, approximately 14% of the folks at the link are brought in through either the EC, emergency commitment, or IVC, involuntary commitment procedures. And I will go back to Councilor McCurris's question. That definitely is something that down the road, I think it needs some help. It needs some work. That process is very unwieldy. It's difficult, even difficult for lawyers to understand and even agree as to what the proper procedures are. I like to ask the team and those that are involved in it, and we're having conversations, with the affected groups by this. But if we were to create a new procedure, what would it look like? Because at some point you keep trying to change an existing procedure, and you do wonder if that's the right approach, or if you just might want to consider what would it look like if you started from scratch.
So legislative, what you're
Yes.
suggesting? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you think that's 14% of the large number that you gave us that included the 1,300 folks that got referred to other sources?
Of the 1,400 unique individuals, that's what I understand.
Okay.
And I might have that wrong. This is all off the top of my head, Commissioner Bender, but that's my understanding. As I look at that, I think that might be a little high.
Okay.
And by the way, when we are aware of emergency commitment or an IVC request, we hold a bed. So that means, and this is something that we developed kind of as we're, you're building the plane as you're flying it in some ways. And so what we learned early on is that when we get to capacity and then we have an IVC issue coming on, we need to have a place to put that person. So we've been holding beds. So I see daily the numbers that we have, as well as number of IVC or EC holds for beds, just to make sure that we have a place for someone at the link.
And that goes 24/7, that
Yes.
process?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, anybody else?
Well, let me make sure I understand your question. When you say that process goes 24/7, what is it that you mean?
Are you accepting emergency holds and IVCs on a 24/7 basis?
That I can't exactly tell you. That is actually done through our nurse manager. Unfortunately, she's not here. But I will tell you that it is a regular daily occurrence that we are accepting ECs and IVCs. There are issues around, I think you probably know because you're asking the question in a very specific way. There are issues around assessments that need to be done. So there has to be someone who's qualified to make the assessments depending upon, whether it's an EC or an IVC.
Okay. Okay, I know that's an issue that I've had people mention, so I just was wanting to follow up on that.
Right, and just so the commission and the council is aware, this is a high priority for us to try to figure this out. I mean, this has taken a lot of staff time at the county, as well as Avera Behavioral Health, trying to figure out how can we manage given the state laws that are currently in place. And so we're hopeful that we will continue to come together and figure out the best way to go forward, whether that means a wholesale rewrite or at least see if we can get somebody to carry that legislation for us at the state capitol or some other way of doing it. But it's of paramount importance for our community, so we understand that.
Okay, thank you. I agree. It's a complicated process and very few that totally understand it, I think. So, all right, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Lots of great information. I appreciate it. So that will take us to item 3, which is a 2021 Museum Enterprise Fund report by Bill Hoskins.
Good afternoon. Bill Hoskins, Director of the Siouxland Heritage Museums. I'm here today to deliver the annual report for the Siouxland Heritage Special Enterprise Fund for 2021. The Enterprise Fund was set up through a joint resolution in 1995. That resolution was updated in the year 2000 and requires an annual report be made. The purpose of the fund is to receive revenues and account for expenses associated with the rental of space in the museum system, sponsorships, and in the provision of programs, events, and services for which a fee is charged. The fund is one of the museum's budgets. It is administered by Minnehaha County. Our annual budget is developed by the staff, approved by the museum board, and then they recommend it to the city council and county commission, who approve it in a joint budget hearing that happens in August. The fund does include all revenue for grants, donations, sponsorships, and endowment revenue received by the museums. In 2021, we had an income of $172,000, expenses of $189,000, and if you look at revenue and expenses over the last 6 years, 3 years we were revenue in excess of expenses. 3 years we had expenses in excess of revenue. Actually, 2018 was a planned year. We had fixtures and equipment for the Irene Hall Museum Resource Center. That was a planned expenditure of about $80,000 beyond our normal operation. In 2020 and 2021 were impacted by COVID quite a bit. Our income comes from a variety of sources, including the Siouxland Heritage Museum's endowment at the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, the Siouxland Heritage Museums Alliance, which is a 501c3 private nonprofit friends group, educational programming for which a fee is charged. That includes things like the murder mystery at the Pettigrew, Woodlawn by Lantern, the day camps that we do, all those programs for which a fee is charged. Exhibits, in this case, was exhibit services for outside organization. Donations, we have cash donations we receive at donation boxes at the courthouse, Pettigrew, and the Irene Hall Museum Resource Center. Rental income is pretty much the rest of this. Our expenses out of it go for the materials we need for educational programming, developing our exhibition program. We have 6 exhibition galleries at the Old Courthouse Museum, 3 at the Pettigrew. We have collections management. Since moving the collection to the Irene Hall Museum Resource Center, we've been unpacking, going through things, upgrading how things are stored, and that's our collection supplies and materials. Rentals have a cost. All the overtime hours and extra staff hours associated with providing that rental space, it comes out of the enterprise fund as an expense and is reimbursed into the operations budget. Payroll is another big part of this. We have 2 full-time positions, the events coordinator and an exhibits assistant, where 1/3 of the salary and benefits are taken out of the enterprise fund. Our summer internship programs also in the payroll. Marketing, and finally other, which we usually do some kind of building project at, and in 2021 we improved gallery lighting by changing out to more efficient fixtures, LEDs and motion detectors, so when they walk into a gallery the lights come up. If you look at fund balance over time, it's gone down. Again, we purposely built the balance as far as we could in 2016 and 17, looking at that Irene Hall Museum Resource Center expenditure in 2018. We do track, we have a section we call obligated funds. So if the DAR or a certain organization or individual gives us a donation for a specific purpose, in 2022, this year, we got a grant from the Mary Chilton DAR Foundation to do a new exhibit on the radio training school that was here in Sioux Falls during World War II. So that's one of those types of projects we're tracking in obligated funds. Just to give you an idea of what some of those projects were, well, we had marketing that was paid for billboard. Exhibit development, all our exhibit development is in the enterprise fund. Educational programming, we get sponsorships for the concert series that are in the plaza and the courtroom. Collection supplies, artifact conservation, that's a professional conservator, doctor treating specific objects in the collection so they have a longer life. Last year in 2021, in October, we did host the meeting of the Mountain Plains Museum Association. It's a national museum organization for the Mountain Plains region, and we hosted the opening reception at the Old Courthouse Museum. That was one of our obligated projects. The Enterprise Fund in 2021 paid for all the labor associated with space rental, all the education supply and material costs, all the conservation costs, all the museum staff training, all the collection supplies material, and exhibit material costs. That's a real quick overview of something. I would be thrilled, the new council members, if you want a tour of the facility and introduction to the museum system, I'd love to set something up. That's what I have this evening. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much. We appreciate your report. That takes us to public input. Is there anyone here tonight for public input? Good evening.
Good evening. Bob Colby, concealed carry permit. There's been a lot of things going on lately, and it seems guns have been involved with a lot of things, whether it's January 6th or whether it's Texas or the state legislature. I think that people need to once in a while read or listen to what the Second Amendment says. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Antonin Scalia was a justice on the Supreme Court. He was an originalist. This is an originalist. This is a 40-year advancement in the guns that they were used by the Continental Army. This is a 40-year advancement. This is percussion. It's not a flintlock. What did the framers mean in the words they used, and why was that amendment included? They say that there's a lot of problems with mental illness and guns. If a weapon of today's semi-automatic, automatic status is issued to someone, whether they're military or police, that's one thing. But if a person feels compelled to buy one for themselves, they have one of two problems. It's either they are mentally touched, in my opinion, or they suffer from testosterone imbalance, kind of like wearing a Ferrari jacket. They need the big weapon. Now, I belong to two organizations that have gone bananas in the last 30 years. I'm a life member of the NRA, and I'm also a registered member of the Republican Party, and both seem to have gone over the hill, so to speak. Guns have always been a problem because we're a gun culture. This was from an editorial in the Deadwood, Dakota Territory newspaper, the Black Hills Pioneer, July 13, 1876. On the other hand, it cannot be assumed that because a man possesses a pistol, that he is qualified as judge, jury, and executioner. It is too good to be that our good citizens can be always faster on the draw than the rascals and robbers of the Black Hills camps. Surely we do not have to wait for the tragic murder of some valued citizen or citizens before we organize to halt this indiscriminate shooting and brawling. It cannot be expected that the law of the pistol will be either just or reasonable. 1876, 100 years after they drafted the Second Amendment. I think now I've been here for a bit. In the time I have spoken, in Texas passed 22 children, short ones, were murdered, and another 16 were wounded in the same time that I took to speak to you. What's the problem? People like myself and you have to come to some kind of a resolution because we have become a gun culture with crazies trying to run the show. We need stable citizens. NRA members, 80% of them are not pushing for all of this wild-ass stuff about you have a right to carry. I really feel just uncomfortable bringing this here. I'd use this to shoot at pheasants. Its effective range is within the room here. But I still feel uncomfortable. I can't see why people have to have open carry everywhere, even in the state capital. The county gets a chance to say that they don't want guns in that area because they have it attached to a courthouse. But what are your rights and my rights of being able to say, I do not want guns on my property? It's our state legislature, it's the bananas, the NRA, and part of it is the Republican Party. And it's up to people like you and me.
Thank you. Your time's up now. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Disregarding this will not get the job done.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here tonight for public comment? Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Chad Bishop. I live at 7405 South Valencia Drive here in Sioux Falls. I'm here this early evening to request some updates to the city's health portion of the website. As of this afternoon, the City of Sioux Falls website states in the vaccine FAQ, when answering the question, is the COVID-19 vaccine effective? While it should be noted that no vaccine is 100% effective, the information from clinical studies showed that both the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are 90 to 94% effective. This needs to be updated. And specifically, my question is 90 to 94% effective at what? It sure isn't preventing infection. How many folks in this room have contracted it since vaccination? We also know it doesn't prevent transmission. And we know that the protection wanes at a rate that is requiring a booster schedule, which seems to be developing a cadence of every 6 months. Now, I'll give the benefit of the doubt and assume the efficacy claim is against severe disease and death. But the transmission and infection were what were used to hammer citizens in our society to comply with the mandate. And this mandate is still in force. Obviously, it's for private entities, so we don't speak of it. But I would respectfully request that you update the entry and be specific. You should probably add some information on how quickly vaccine-induced efficacy wanes. Second, also from the city's FAQ, what are the potential side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine? Just like with other types of vaccination, the process of building immunity can cause temporary symptoms such as headache, fatigue, muscle soreness, and mild fever. These are normal signs that the body is building immunity and may last up to a week. Did you know that when the FOIA request was originally filed with the FDA to release the Pfizer-BioNTech documentation used in the approval of the emergency use authorization, the FDA, in conjunction with Pfizer, petitioned the court to limit the rate of disclosure so that it would take nearly 75 years to release all of the documentation? Please keep in mind the FDA reviewed the entire submission for the EUA for the Pfizer-BioNTech in 103 days. Thanks to Judge Pittman in Fort Worth, Texas, God bless Texas, I have 2 native Texans in my household, that schedule has been accelerated. Rather than producing 500 pages a month, the FDA's proposed timeline, he ordered the agency to turn over 55,000 a month. That means all the Pfizer vaccine data should be public by the end of the summer rather than, say, the year 2097. One of the first disclosures was a list of adverse effects reported during the trial. Below, you will find an excerpt from the Freedom of Information Act data dump of the Pfizer approval submission. You will find petite mal epilepsy seizures on the adverse event reporting, specifically on page 21. I highlight this page. There are several others because my father, Jim, 78 years, 7 months, and 8 days after being born, first exhibited what his physician and neurologist identified as petite mal epileptic seizures 11 days after his first dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Our family would like our community to know that the Journal of Neuroimmunology states it this way: healthcare providers should be aware that the possibility of post-vaccination epilepsy. So my second request is that I would like you to link to the now published list of adverse events that were discovered during the clinical trials and reported via FOIA. Finally, from the CDC's website earlier this afternoon, on June 17th of 2022, the Food and Drug Administration authorized the emergency use authorization for a 2-dose Moderna COVID-19 vaccine primary series for administration to children ages 6 months through 5 years. Please note this is not full approval, but another EUA for vaccines that were developed against the original variants of the virus and not the most recent. This afternoon, I read a tweet by our faithful City Council reporter, Mr. Mitchell, alerting me to the fact that Sesame Street's Elmo had received his COVID-19 vaccine. Those of you who have had to suffer through my previous statements can imagine what I have to say about this piece of literal state-sponsored propaganda, especially as I draw your attention to the CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report from April 26th, where they highlight the use of screening for anti-nucleocapsid antibodies to determine that 75% of children have already been infected with SARS-CoV-2. This is just one of the 28 antibodies that are not conferred by administration of the COVID-19 vaccines on offer, but are induced during infection of the COVID-19 recovered. 75% back in April. What is the benefit to these children who have recovered, and what is the risk? The risk is not zero. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? All right, if not, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn on the county side.
Let's go.
Motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Counselor Cole, do you have a motion?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, Nicer.
Thank you, Nysert. All in favor, say yes.
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 All right, the meeting is adjourned.